So there are some signs that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia may be heading towards a breakup. So we discussed the story the other day. Saudi Arabia decided they're going to cut back oil production by 20 million barrels a day, I believe it was. Was it 2 million or 20 million? Whatever. The specifics are kind of irrelevant because all you need to know is they're doing this specifically to hurt Biden and hurt the Democrats and get the Republicans elected because they know they'll get whatever they want from the Republicans. Whereas the Democrats are only partially bought, the Republicans are fully bought. We just had a $94 million contribution to the Republican Party through Norm Coleman, who's a former Republican senator. He's got all these lobbyist groups and whatnot. So they've bought the Republican Party, $2 billion donation to Jared Kushner, tens of millions or hundreds of millions given to Donald Trump for his golf courses, and they play these shitty Saudi events there. So they own one of the two parties. The other thing is this is OPEC Plus, which is, Saudi Arabia and Russia working together again to shaft Biden and screw over the United States and bolster the Republicans. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Gas prices are going to spike as a result of this move from OPEC Plus and Saudi Arabia. Now, in direct response to that, we're finally having a discussion in this country about, well, what the fuck are we even doing with Saudi Arabia, with our deep, long-term relationship with them? If they're not going to uphold their end of the bargain, well, what the fuck are we even doing? Like, we have a geopolitical alliance, and we overlook all the terrible things they do, and for what? If at the end of the day, the oil deal isn't even as solid as we hoped it would be, well, now we get this. This is in Common Dreams. Khanna and Blumenthal proposed bill to immediately halt all U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Quote, their brutal war in Yemen and their fleecing of American consumers at the pump must have consequences, Representative Ro Khanna said of the Saudis. Representative Ro Khanna announced Sunday that he is teaming up with Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal on a bill to block all U.S. weapon sales to Saudi Arabia in response to Saudi-led OPEC's newly announced decision to slash oil production, driving up gas prices across the globe. In an op-ed for Politico, Khanna, Blumenthal, and Yale School of Management professor Jeffrey Sonnenfeld argued that OPEC and Russia's move to cut oil production by 2 million barrels per day starting in November will worsen global inflation, undermine successful efforts in the U.S. to bring down the price of gas, and help fuel Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. The Saudi decision was a pointed blow to the U.S., but the U.S. also has a way to respond. It can promptly pause the massive transfer of American warfare technology into the eager hands of the Saudis, the trio wrote. That is why we are proposing bicameral legislation in the Senate and House on Tuesday that will immediately halt all U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia. For several years now, our colleagues have been considering similar proposals, but those measures haven't passed, they added. Due to intense bipartisan blowback to Saudi's collusion with Russia, we think this time is different. Based on our conversation with colleagues, our legislation is already garnering bipartisan support in both chambers. Now, one of the problems with this is it ain't going to get much bipartisan support because, again, the Saudis just pumped $94 million into the Republican Party, and the Trump wing is totally owned by Saudi Arabia. They own the Trumps. So it might not get all that much bipartisan support. The question is, will the Democrats grow a spine and a backbone and see the big picture here and understand they are snubbing us? And they are picking a side in the Russia-Ukraine war. They're on the side of Russia. And they're picking a side in American politics, the side of the Republicans. For a long time, the Saudis have bought both parties, just like the Israelis buy both parties. But as time has gone by, it has shifted more and more, and now they have a favorite. And the favorite is the Republicans. Because they know they'll get 110% of what they want from the Republicans, as opposed to about 75% of what they want from the Democrats. So, look, one of the responses you could have to this, and it's actually a reasonable response, is, well, hold on. We already gave them, multiple multi-billion-dollar weapons deals, so that already went through. How much of an effect will it really have if we stop now? And the reaction to that is, yeah, you're right. I don't know how much of an effect it'll have, because they already have so many weapons because of us. And one thing I read, I don't know if this is accurate, but apparently they said it's cut it off for a year Why would you just do a year? Why wouldn't you do permanently? I don't understand that at all. The other thing is, remember, it was Bernie Sanders and Mike Lee. Under the Trump administration, they passed a bill which said no more support for Saudi Arabia's genocide in Yemen. And Trump vetoed the bill. He took the pro-genocide, pro-Saudi position. Well, Biden, when he got in office, he did some virtue signaling about how, oh yeah, we're not going to sell them offensive weapons anymore, offensive weapons, but for defensive stuff, we're still going to sell them stuff. So he did this bullshit, veneer of, oh, we're changing the policy, but they didn't really change the policy. Well, now you have a window where you might actually be able to change that policy. They continue here and they say, according to one estimate, the U.S. agreed to sell roughly $64.1 billion worth of weapons, averaging over $10 billion a year to Saudi Arabia between 2015 and 2020. Arms sales to the Saudis, the largest purchaser of U.S. weaponry, have continued under the Biden administration, despite its pledges to end the war on Yemen and render the oil kingdom a pariah over its assassination of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. In the wake of OPEC's announcement of a production cut aimed at propping up oil prices, calls for an end to U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia intensified, with Khanna and Bernie Sanders leading the chorus. Quote, "We must end OPEC's illegal price-fixing cartel, eliminate military assistance to Saudi Arabia, and move aggressively to renewable energy," Sanders wrote in a social media post on Wednesday. So that's the other thing here. So you should do this. You should cut off the weapons to them. You should condemn the genocide in Yemen. Stop arming Saudi. Stop supporting Saudi. Maybe even sanction Saudi at this point. But you better have all your ducks in a row. You better make a deal with Venezuela now for their oil. Hop back in the Iran deal now to normalize and smooth over relations with them. And also, either ban U.S. oil and gas exports, because it's nearly half of it I think we export, or nationalize oil and gas in this country so that we can control domestically the supply. Because we're not going to be able to make up that shortfall. If we break up with Saudi Arabia, you have to have a plan in action to make up for that shortfall in the short run. But in the long run, Bernie's right. We should all copy California, which says no more gas cars by 2030. We should do that for the whole country. Really move towards, electric cars. So, anyway, this is what's going on. This is the first time in my lifetime that there's been a real consideration of like, wow, these Saudis are a real problem. You would have thought that after 9/11, when these assholes were directly involved, more involved than anybody thought at the time, even. Most of the hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. They were funding extremists around the globe. Salafi fundamentalists. You would think that that would have been the moment of like, oh, this seems like an unsustainable relationship. But no. Well, here we are in the year 2022, and maybe, just maybe now, we might be waking up. I hope so. All right, guys, that's the show. I love y'all to death. Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe and comment. And click that little bell notification so you know every single time a video drops. I would really, really appreciate that. If you guys keep subscribing, maybe eventually one day a boy will reach his dream and get over 1 million subs. But I don't have my fingers crossed for that because we all know the algorithm is really not kind to your boy. The other thing is, if you guys want, you can now listen to the full Kyle Kulinski shows on all the podcasting outlets. It is available on all the podcasting outlets. And we've been doing that for, I don't know how long now, a month or so, maybe 2 months, something like that. And so it's a new thing. If you want to listen that way, you can listen that way. And thank you to all the patrons who keep this show going. We fund this show through small dollar donors. Never had a conversation with an advertiser my entire time doing the show. The only ad money we get is the AdSense through Google, which there's a buffer between me and the advertisers, so I don't have to talk to any of them, which obviously I far prefer to having to get down to the gutter and do that stuff I don't want to do at all. So thank you to all the patrons who support the show. You guys mean the world to me. And thank you to all the Substack subscribers, to Crystal, Kyle, and friends. You guys are awesome as well. So I love all you guys very much. Everybody have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you soon. Peace. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.